So what's up people and welcome to another Alita Battle Angel video. So I finally finished reading the Iron City novel, the Alita Battle Angel Iron City prequel novel. And I just wanted to give my comments with regards to this. Overall, I found it quite enjoyable. But it all depends on what you want out of the novel. Now, to give a little bit of a background, the author of the book is Pat Cadigan, and the publisher is Titan Books. Now, Pat Cadigan seems to be a relatively well-known author. She's won several awards, including the Arthur C. Clarke Award for her novel Sinners and Fools. She's won 3 Locus Awards for Best Short Story for Angel. And she's also won the Hugo Award for the girl thing who went out for sushi. Yeah, so I guess Hugo gave her an award. Anyway, she seems to be pretty well known. And overall, I found her writing style to be pretty good. However, once again, this all depends on what you want out of the story. Now, I'm not going to go into too much of the detail of the plot of the story, to avoid spoilers, and there's not going to be any spoilers unless you haven't gone to see the Alita Battle Angel movie, in which case I don't even know why you're watching this video. But if you've seen the movie, yeah, I mean, basically everything I'm going to talk about is related to the story of the movie. So if you're looking for a prequel that's going to be a big action adventure similar to what you saw in the movie, then you're going to be disappointed, because the plot of this novel is relatively mundane. It's kind of not really even important to the novel itself, because I think the purpose of this novel was to provide readers with more depth and more information with regards to the world of Iron City and the characters that come out in Alita Battle Angel, minus, of course, Alita herself. And because Alita doesn't come out in this novel, that's one of the major reasons why there is very little action. So if you came out of the theater thinking, I wish I could understand a little bit more about this story, and even if you had the manga available for you, if you wanted to say, well, there seems to be things that are different between the movie and the manga, and so I would like to find out a little bit more about what the cinematic universe is like, then this book is really good because it provides a lot of background information with regards to the city, with regards to that mysterious dude who came out at the end portrayed by Edward Norton. You know, it goes into a lot of things. And so if you want to know a little bit more about the history of Iron City, or, you know, some of the in-depth persona of the characters who come out, minus Alita, of course, or if you wanted to learn about, you know, the family lifestyle of Ido and the other Alita, his daughter Alita, then things are provided to you by this novel. And once again, I didn't mind the writing style of Pat Cadigan, with the exception of one thing which I'll go into later. Overall, it goes into a lot of depth, and I think for anybody who wants to know more about how this trilogy or this movie series or franchise will go, I think this is a good book to get. And for people who read the manga, you will find some very heartening chapters in there, like the backstory of Hugo. If you noticed and if you complained like me that there was no backstory of Hugo in the movie, at least you get one in the book. And it goes faithfully to what you see in the manga. And actually, I enjoyed the backstory of Hugo very much because it goes even further by introducing his parents. And so that was a treat. It also, of course, again, goes into the background with regards to Dyson Ido, Chiren, and Alita, how they lived after they got exiled from Iron City. You'll also get some information with regards to the gentleman who I will call the Watcher. And it goes into a little bit of information there, but it does say the Watcher is the ruler of Iron City. In the movie, of course, you're not really sure, and you get into this debate. Oh, was that gentleman who was portrayed by Edward Norton at the end ruling Iron City, or not Iron City, but ruling Zalem, or was he just there as a citizen of Zalem? And this novel basically clarifies that he is ruling Zalem. And originally, while I was reading the book, I was a little bit not sure, even from the book, whether he was really ruling Zalem, because you get a lot of the story from the points of view of a lot of the characters in there. So in the middle of the book, you find out that this Watcher, who is that gentleman portrayed by Edward Norton at the end, yes, Vector says he's ruling Zalem. But if anybody has read manga or watched anime, you often find that those types of information coming from a character can often be a red herring, and the writer uses it to trick the readers to later on find something else, But at the end of the book, you find out through the Watcher himself that he really is the ruler of Zalem. And so, yeah, there's a lot of information coming from the book. It also talks about, of course, the history of the fall, what it was like before the fall. All of that is written in there. So if you really want to get a lot more depth with regards to the world building of Alita Battle Angel cinematic universe, then I think this book is really good. And so long as you don't mind it that way, like you don't expect to have a lot of action, or you're not pulled into the book going, gosh, I gotta read the next chapter because it's a cliffhanger. You won't find any cliffhangers in this book. So you do have to push through yourself to want to actually read this book to get more information with regards to the cinematic universe. But if that is what you're going for, then again, this book I think is pretty darn good. It also goes into a lot more character depth with regards to Hugo, Tanji, and Koyomi. And to be honest, I think Pat Cadigan did a better job representing Hugo like the Hugo in the comic than the movie. On the other hand, for that romantic scene, the Hugo in the movie was pretty darn good because he had that very warm, soft persona, whereas in the book, he doesn't. And probably, I'm hoping that Pat Cadigan will show that when he meets Alita, Hugo will change. And it will be interesting because of the fact that Pat Cadigan does write the story as if you get a glimpse into what they're thinking. So if you go into the other novelization, the actual movie novelization, you may get some idea with regards to what Hugo's thinking and why he starts falling for Alita so much. I'm speculating, but if she writes the movie novelization same way she wrote Iron City, then I would expect there will be a lot more, understanding of what Hugo's thinking during his relationship with Alita. And so, yeah, I found that to be pretty good. I mean, Hugo is portrayed as a survivor. He's definitely a survivor here. And similar to the one in the comic, Hugo is not a superhuman being, right? He somehow gets through life through a little bit of cunning and hopefully a little bit of luck. And yeah, I mean, he doesn't smoothly go through life at all. And so that's something that you get out of this. And that also gives you some idea why he wants to go up to Zalem. Aside from that backstory that you know about, he really has a hard time in Iron City. Okay, and Tanji's basically Tanji, so he's the same as you get in the movie. The character that I had an issue with a little bit is Koyomi. And I did mention it in my Koyomi video, that the Koyomi in the novel is also a lot colder than the Koyomi in the movie. And she is a jacker, and she does not mind jacking at all, other cyborgs and ripping their limbs off for credits, So it is definitely a different sort of persona than the Koyomi that you get in the movie, which is a very warm Koyomi, or the Koyomi that you even get in the comic, which is somewhere between the Koyomi in the novel and the Koyomi in the movie. The Koyomi in the manga is not as warm as the one in the movie. She's much more a survivor, but at the same time, she still has a relatively good heart. So I would think that she would not really want to go become a jacker unless she absolutely had to. Whereas in this one, maybe it's because she was trying to get along with Tanji and Hugo, and those were really the only friends that she had, or at least the close friends that she had, that maybe she got dragged along with it. It's a little bit hard to say, but she doesn't seem to be guilty at all about being a jacker. And so that's a little bit different from the Koyomi that you see. However, that's not the character that I had the biggest issue with. The biggest issue I had with the novel in terms of character is Vector. And I had an issue already with the character of Vector in the movie versus the character of Vector in the manga. I always liked the character of Vector in the manga because as much as he was a criminal and as much as he understood that he was a criminal, he did it for survival. And so he always had that situation. If money and survival wasn't the issue, he didn't mind being a good person, or a reasonably good person, to the point where he doesn't have to commit himself too much to anything. However, of course, you noticed in the movie that he was quite a bit darker, that he did it knowing that he wanted to go into a much more oppressive sort of situation. However, the Vector in the novel is even worse. I mean, the Vector in the novel is a relatively nasty dude. He has an ego the size of Iron City, and he does a lot of things for his ego, which is very different from the Vector that I remember in the comic, at least my interpretation of Vector from the comic, who was a survivalist, right? Ego was something that sometimes got in the way of surviving properly, right? Doing things for your ego really didn't help you survive better. And the Vector in the comic was practical enough to understand that that could get in the way of, being able to live another day. Whereas the Vector in the novel, he really has a huge ego. I mean, the reason he goes after Chiren, of course, is because he wants her as a trophy just as much as she is a good, cyber surgeon for the motorball. But that persona is a much more nastier, darker, kind of, a lot more self-centered persona. And you could see that even with his relationship with Hugo compared to what you saw in the manga or even what you saw in the movie. I mean, he basically is ruthless with Hugo. If Hugo ever screws up, he's going to basically take him out. And so, that was one of the issues I had with the novel, was how they kind of represented Vector. On the other hand, I really liked how they represented Nurse Gerhardt, because of the fact that she actually talked, right? I mean, in the movie, she was like, making all those nice faces, but she didn't get a chance to speak. It's as if, wow, did they get rid of your speech, cybernetic speech implant or something like that, which of course she doesn't have. But you think that she does, looking at the movie, considering how little she spoke, but in the novel she speaks quite a bit, and she's actually a decent character. She may not be as warm and as loving because, again, she is a survivor in this city, and so I think it was portrayed quite well. So overall, it's not too bad. As far as the big question, the gentleman, the Watcher up in the sky, represented by Edward Norton in the movie, if you're going to expect that there's going to be a lot of information about him, no. If you're going to expect that there's going to be a tremendous amount of information about Zalem? No. You'll get a little bit, but what you already know probably if you've read the comic, yeah, that's about right. And you won't get too much depth with regards to Zalem, at least from this novel. Okay, and as far as plot is concerned, like I say, it's minimal. There is a plot and there is a story behind this, but it is relatively minimal. And so don't hold your breath with regards to expecting a really in-depth story. There's no action, and unlike a lot of Yukito Kishiro's manga stories, where even when there was no action, like in the Holy Night chapters, there still was a great amount of compassion. That is missing with regards to the story, and that's where I'm gonna come back and criticize this novel the most. One of the things I loved about the Battle Angel Alita comic verse, and one of the things I noticed from the movie, is the great amount of empathy and heart that it had. And I think a lot of people said that about the movie, at least the people who didn't, go attacking the movie mercilessly, said that even if they complained about a lot of other things, they did say that, for example, the character of Alita had a lot of heart, had a lot of depth. Her interactions with, for example, Dyson Ido was very nice to see and was very warm. And that was the thing that I remember about the Battle Angel Alita comic, was that despite the fact that it was this extremely brutally violent cyberpunk manga, there was always a feeling of warmth and romanticism to it. And that is what I feel is missing with regards to this book. It's a very dark book in many ways. It's kind of a depressing book because it's trying to show the depressed nature of Iron City. But the thing, again, I liked about the comic and what I loved about the movie was, despite all the darkness and all the depression, there was always the warmth from the people who was trying to live in that city. And that's something you don't get in this novel. I'm hoping that you do get it in the follow-up, of course, movie novelization, which I haven't read yet, but I'm going to go buy and then go read soon. But I'm a little bit worried that maybe that is the writing style of the author. A lot of science fiction authors don't really have that romanticization with regards to character relationships, right? Science fiction stories were never really about the character relationships. It was usually about this epic, historical things that were going on with regards to the change of the galaxy or the eventual demise of the human race or something like that. And so you really had very little time to feel empathy to a lot of the characters that you do see, compared to a lot of other types of novelization, such as dramatic novelization or, love stories or things like that. But the thing I loved again about the Battle Angel Alita comic verse, as well as the movie, was this warm feeling. But despite all that, I still think this was a book worth reading, just because of the fact that if you're really interested in the Alita cinematic universe and the base story that happens around it, and you're wondering, I wonder what the world is like, what the history is like, why, people are acting a certain way, then this book is worth getting just to get a little bit more of a glimpse with regards to that specific world. And since I think that was the major purpose of this novel, for the most part, I feel this novel succeeded. So anyway, all again depends upon what sort of story you want. If you want a major action-packed story, you're not going to get that. If you want some sort of romanticization and, relationship sort of romantic story, as you saw between Alita and Hugo, you're not going to get that here either. If you're trying to get some in-depth understanding of some of the mysteries like Zalem or that gentleman at the end of the movie, you're not going to get that either. But if you really want to get some information with regards to Iron City and the citizens there, then you'll get that in spades, which may be the reason why this book is titled Alita Battle Angel Iron City. Okay, so overall, yeah, I did enjoy it. It does take a little bit of effort to read. This doesn't draw you through the next chapters the way the manga does, or, other novels such as, Da Vinci Code, where you're always trying to read the next chapter to learn what's going on. You're not going to get that in this novel. However, it is a good information source reference novel, and it does have a fairly nice story behind it. Okay, well, that's about it for this video. And if you have any comments, if you've read this novel, what do you think about it? And if you've read both the novel and the comic, how do you think this novel fares to what you see in the comic? And of course, if you've watched the movie, then how do you think it fares compared to what you saw in the movie? For example, the characters. And thank you in advance for any comments you leave, because as always, I really appreciate all the information I get from your comments. And yeah, thank you very much for watching the video. And I'll continue to make more Alita Battle Angel videos in the future. I hope you join us at that time. And until then, happy novel reading, happy comic reading, happy movie watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.